Welcome back to The Small Nonprofit, the podcast where your passion meets action. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of The Small Nonprofit Podcast. I'm Maria, your host, and I'm here with Caitlin again, your co-host, I'm guessing.
Hi, I guess so. Is that my official title? I don't know. I'm here.
I think so, right? We got to give you a title here. What would you prefer?
I'll go co-host. I love it.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad that you're here. And I'm glad that we have such a fun topic to talk about. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about trends. I'm not a trendy person, so this is thankfully fundraising trends. Let's get our crystal balls out and see what we think the year ahead holds for fundraising.
Ooh, so excited. I love how you said that. I feel like then in 2026 we can revisit and see what we got right.
Yeah. Are we measuring KPIs in our
Yeah. How many organizations will adapt AI by the end of this conversation?
Yeah. That would be a fun one to think about.
That would be great. Okay, so let's get started on some trends. So 2025, I think that we saw a lot of really big changes in 2024, and that a lot of them have been coming out of the pandemic, and a lot of those things have been really exciting. So I would love to just jump into your favorite trend, which would be.
I think something that I discovered in 2024 and completely, have gone feet first in on, and I'm just so happy that I found this perspective and community, and how I found you as well, is community-centric fundraising. As soon as I heard about that and I heard about the principles there, it was just like a light bulb moment for me, where I was like, this is how I want to fundraise. And it was just putting all of these things and all these thoughts and feelings and questions and the gut feelings that I'd always had about fundraising, like putting it into like black and white, like these are the principles and this is how we should be doing it. And it was just amazing. You're such a great speaker about community-centric fundraising. If you want to give a little bit of a synopsis of what it is.
Yes, so community-centric fundraising is about centering your community and decision makers rather than your board members, your donors, anyone who's not personally impacted by the issues or doesn't have that lived experience. So definitely I for 2025, I predict more organizations will start implementing the principles now that people have had time to learn and get their feet wet and just really just get involved with it as much as they can. I am already seeing some trends that I think will continue to 2025. So when AFP Icon opened their speaker requests for 2025 in Seattle, in the CCF Slack, there was a call for people to come together and apply to Icon so they could bring more CCF based content to an organization that is AFP. So I think that was really interesting. And then I'm also seeing more like chapters popping up CCF wise. So I think with the organization that people have been able to do in the Slack group and in person, and with the Slack actually moving on, with CCF actually moving off Slack to something else, I think that there'll be a lot more mobilizing that happens in 2025. And probably that we'll start hearing and learning more about the tangible results that people have achieved from implementing CCF.
Yes, I love that. Because, yeah, it is something that is quite new. So there's not a lot of studies and numbers and the kind of tangible results that we can really point to. I think in our experience, because this is what we practice together and what we use a lot when we're working with clients, we know we can speak to it, but it's all still like anecdotal. So it'll be really nice to actually see, okay, what are the numbers? What is actually the return here? And also, what are we measuring too? Is it always like, with a CCF perspective, are we always going to be measuring dollars raised, or are there other things that we need to measure in terms of success, not just for fundraising, but for an organization in general? And people are always talking about increasing numbers of people served, but also thinking about like the depth of the service that you're providing to your community. Like, how do we look at that in a different way?
I love when you're talking about what do we measure, because two of my colleagues, Stager Vitelli Associates, Sarah and Laura there, they have this really unique approach to major gifts where they measure other things to qualify someone as a major gift donor. Like, have they come to volunteer? Have they signed a petition? Like, how involved are they with the organization?
Love that.
I do have one more prediction around CCF, and it is that AFP will continue to close the gap between themselves and CCF. Because I've seen them sponsor some CCF events and talk about it a little bit more. And I think that is like an effort to have that affinity bias kick in, where like CCF is very equity based and equity seeking, while AFP hasn't traditionally had that kind of reputation. So I think by trying to get closer to CCF, they're trying to get some of that. No, see, we're okay. CCF likes us. And I don't know how that will turn out, but I'm excited to see.
Interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And yeah, and I think when I'm talking to clients and organizations from all over, like I'm definitely seeing a lot more. I ask, how much do you know about, or have you heard of like community-centric fundraising? And I'm hearing more people saying, yeah, I know what that is, and I'm really excited about it. And yeah, there's still people who need a bit of explanation and background and everything on it. But also every time I talk about it and talk about how this is how we practice, everyone's like, I love that. This is amazing. And this is the way that we should be going. I'm really excited.
I'm so thankful that the clients that come to us are willing to do this because it's different for each one of them. And it's just, I predict more of that in our future as well.
Awesome. Okay. Other predictions. This is one that you also brought into my life. Man, you really changed a lot of 2024 for me. But so, using AI in nonprofit organizations, or nonprofit organizations increasing their use of AI to support their work. You introduced me to ChatGPT. I was not a user of ChatGPT beforehand. And I can't really, I'm not sure what my barrier was. I think I didn't really understand exactly what it was and exactly what it could do. And I think I also had a bit of a, I don't know, I like writing. I've been writing for pretty much my whole life since I could, really. And so I had a bit of a, no, I'm not using ChatGPT. I'm a writer. I don't need that. But then in using it, I find it just really supports with speeding up the process that I need to get to where I want to be, and supporting clients better and generating ideas too. Just like not having to worry about that blank page panic feeling has been huge. But what kind of things do you see, like where else can nonprofits utilize Chat GPT or other AI systems to support their work? Because we're always being told to do more with less. So like how can AI step in here and help with that?
I'm a huge fan of AI. Like, I just think that there's so many possibilities for it. And I'm excited to see some CRMs already start to add AI elements to their service package. So that is definitely going to be a growing projection, I don't know, a growing trend.
Trajectory, maybe that's the word. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, words. I feel like a growing trend for sure. When it comes to nonprofits, I think what you said is exactly right. Like, people have felt a hesitancy to do it because who has time to learn something new? It's already so rough. Like, it's so rough. So just having that opportunity to try something, even if it's a little bit at a time, because now we're a year, 2 years in into AI, right? Like, having other people around you saying, oh no, I use it every day. Like, I use ChatGPT every single day. I use Descript to edit the podcast. I use Autopod to edit the podcast, right? So there's like multiple things that just cut down the amount of effort that I had to put into something significantly. And I think there's like small ways to have people integrated into their day-to-day role that they might start exploring. So like board meeting minutes, for example, just having Fathom or Otter AI, that's something that on the board that I'm on, the Living Wage Network, we are exploring right now. Like, we don't want to add additional strain on the staff. I don't think that's appropriate. And we don't have someone whose role was to come in and take the notes. So it's just a fun exploration.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's fun to be able to explore what it can do. And I think and maybe in thinking about it a bit more, there's a bit of a barrier in feeling like you're letting go of control over something, over a process. But I think in my learning of it, Like the best kind of metaphor I can equate it to is like driving a car. Like you still have to do a lot of work and have the skills and control it, but it gets you from point A to point B quicker. But you're still like in control. And I never just pop something in and let ChatGPT do its thing and then take it as is. Like I'm always looking at it afterwards, making tweaks, making edits, like making sure that it is right and the best quality it can be. But it just gives me that starting place. And sometimes it's completely wrong, but it helps me to know, oh, that's not what I want to say. Okay, so I can go this way.
I've been like sharing resources on my LinkedIn to try to get like more EDs specifically to use ChatGPT. Not that's the only AI out there, but ChatGPT feels more accessible than others, so that's an easy one to start. And one of them has been like creating your own GPT, which is something that I use all the time. Like it's trained on the 30 pages of my own writing, like my favorite pieces. And it's if you had to write a comment on this piece, what would it be? And it just comes exactly with what I would say. It's very close and it's trained on my own writing. So I think that there's things like that nonprofits will start exploring and start getting more comfortable with in 2025.
I think that nonprofits are and nonprofit staff are constantly being asked to do so much. And if there is something that is going to help them streamline their work, get through their day, be able to do something that would usually take them 4 hours in 20 or 40 minutes, then they should be able to use that tool. And we shouldn't have to put that guilt and that shame on ourselves for using it because we're doing really good work. And yeah, for me, it's always just a balance of like risk reward or what the benefit is and what the detriment is. And if this is, I think that this is going to help the sector so much because we're just working at just bare bones capacity. So let's give ourselves a break.
I think probably just like any other tool, like there's ways to misuse it, right? If I just upload all my donors on ChatGPT, like that's not the best way to use it, right? But I feel like training it on my own voice and like pulling content from that, like it's not, you know, problematic. But I guess it depends. Like same thing with like other AIs where it follows the like creation of training materials and it's just taking screenshots for you as you go. Like I don't see that as very problematic either. So just like any tool, I guess it could be misused and it could be not as helpful as you would like it to be.
Yeah. Okay. Another trend, it feels weird to feel this as being trend, but something that is definitely picking up steam that I've seen in the last little while and definitely picked up on. You do a lot of great like workshops and webinars on this is ethical storytelling. So I'll let you take it away. How do you describe ethical storytelling?
Yeah, I think ethical storytelling centers the dignity and autonomy of the service user or the storyteller. So for me, like I've seen so many more people pop out and start talking about this. So like Diana, she ran the Ethical Nonprofit Summit. She launched it completely on her own. She got a whole bunch of people to come. It was, I think, like multiple days too. And there was such a hunger for it, for like ethical nonprofit storytelling and nonprofit practices. So I spoke at that one. But also, like, over the past year, I've gotten to know the work of Maria Bryan as well, who has her own podcast and who talks about the trauma of nonprofit work. Like, how traumatic is it to tell a story and to be the person receiving the story, and what you can do somatic wise to calm your body, and how you can collect the stories in a way that feels safer for you and for the storyteller. I definitely see this popping up more and more, especially with CCF principles becoming more widely adopted. But what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. And sorry, just when you were saying that, that really resonated with me. I think in my background in the space that I worked in nonprofits, I spent a lot of time working in pediatric oncology space. When I was talking to people who had received services, I was often talking to families who had a child with cancer or had a child pass away. And like when you're talking about the trauma of that was so heavy for me, especially after becoming a parent myself. That it hit hard before that, but it was just adding on a new level when I came back as a parent. Yeah, it's like, how do we do this in the best way possible that's ethical? And I love thinking about it that way, like ethical not just for the person who's telling the story, but the person who's receiving the story too. Because like we matter in this, and it is taking on that like that grief and that trauma sometimes, taking it into yourself. So like, how do you not burn out from that? How do you have like emotional resilience and everything there? How do you process those feelings? So yeah, I feel like ethical storytelling really captures all of that. Because yeah, I think in other ways in the past I've seen more storytelling that didn't feel good, I think, on either side. And yeah, it felt more extractive and exploitative, and it was really, the storytelling was only better for the benefit of the organization and for the funding, and it just felt wrong. It felt wrong, and I wasn't super participatory in some of that, but I saw it going on. And just even like reading other stories sometimes that just feel very like, are you okay with this story being told? And yeah, and I've had some experiences when I was didn't have when I was starting out a little bit more in fundraising, of sharing somebody's story and trying to do it in the best way possible, but not having the experience behind me to do it in a very like ethical and kind of people first way, and like making those mistakes, and it did have an impact on that person. And like I carry that with me like still, and it's been like years. So like really understanding how we're telling stories and how we're doing it in a way that is, you know, ethical and is right and has the best interest of both the person telling the story and receiving the story at heart. So I think that's really, it's so important. Storytelling is huge in nonprofits.
It's interesting to me because a lot of the people that I have interviewed for their stories, like we have a similar lived experience. Because as a queer immigrant woman who came here as a refugee and is also bi, and there's a lot of intersectionalities that kind of are at play. So, like talking about poverty, like usually I could joke around with the person telling the stories. Oh, you had butter spaghetti too? Haha. Wasn't that fun? There's been some stories that I've been told where I didn't have the shared lived experience, and the storyteller told it so rawly that I was just completely taken aback. And one of them that sticks in my mind is someone who had experienced solitary confinement for 30 days for just having a little bit of weed in them while in prison. So just like her experience with that, and it was just so horrible to hear. So just like thinking about how we center the storyteller's dignity and autonomy and also the safety of both parties was something that was completely new to my thinking. And I'm excited to see how people implement that in the next year. My other storytelling kind of trend is tied to AI actually. Because at the beginning of generative like images, we saw that a local furniture bank was actually using generative images AI to create images of their service users. So it was like a lady in a dark room with a stream of light on her face, like looking sad, and it's completely empty because there's no furniture, right? So I think those questions are already starting to pop up. Like, how do these images that are fictional, they're not representative of any person, can those ever be ethical?
That's a really interesting question. Yeah. Oh,
Because it's representative of a community at a minimum. And would they want to be represented that way?
yeah. Okay. Lots to look out for there in 2025. Okay, and I think what we were talking about leads into the next trend, which is not a new trend, but I think it's something that feels like it's picking up steam. Like I keep saying this, but it feels like it's gaining more traction or like happening more often, at least in my world. And I don't know about yours as well. And it maybe relates to the storytelling aspect and, you know, the vicarious kind of trauma that we take on sometimes as nonprofit workers. But it's burnout. Yeah, not a new thing, but yeah, it's definitely something that I've experienced myself for sure. And I'm sure a lot of other people listening have as well. I pulled some stats just before this, and something that I found really eye-opening is that I think this is a 2022 report, but with 45% of nonprofit employees report experiencing symptoms of burnout. That's almost half. 45%. That's wild to me. And that's like higher than the higher than it should be, higher than the average. We've got a much bigger turnover rate than the labor market average. The labor market average is about 12%, and in the nonprofit sector, it's 19%. We're seeing lots of people burning out in the sector and moving elsewhere, moving into different spaces. We see lots of fundraisers becoming consultants and not working in house anymore. And yeah, it's becoming an issue. It has been an issue for a long time, but I feel like it's not an issue that's being resolved anytime soon. I don't know, unfortunately, that I've seen. What do you think?
I've definitely seen a lot of people leave the sector to become consultants, which I think is creating a leadership gap because like these brilliant people who could have been the next EDs or DODs are saying like, hell no, I don't want to deal with those board members, or I don't want to deal with this like inept leader who is like a corporate reject or something, like who doesn't really understand the sector. Like, why would I do that when I could get paid like three times as much as a consultant, controlling my hours, location, who I interact with? And I've definitely seen that as a huge increase. It feels like there's a lot more consultants.
Mm-hmm. And then that creates a big gap in skilled, I think specifically for like fundraisers and everything, but it creates a huge gap in people who are looking for those director of developments or like people who have 10 plus years of experience. Because I experienced burnout at year 10, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not available to take those director of development roles because of what I experienced working in house.
And I've seen reports that say, how likely are you in the next 2 years to leave your job? Like you are actively looking to leave within the next 2 years. And we know that, right? We joke around most fundraisers last a year to a year and a half. But for EDs who are actively looking for that talent to support their organization, they're left at a little bit of a standstill. So I think another trend that we're going to see an increase of fractional fundraising and fractional executives at nonprofits.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a good thing, to be honest. It gives the chance for people who are experienced in the sector and have those incredible skills, because fundraising is such a skill, and it is something that you build up over time and experience, and you cannot skip over that. And it allows those people to be retained in the sector and allows those skills to be retained in the sector. It maybe just looks a little bit different, but it allows those people who have those like high quality skills to also provide those skills to organizations that maybe wouldn't be able to afford them on a full-time salary, but they can afford them on a fractional fundraiser salary and still be able to have that experience. Because if you hire the wrong fundraiser, you're wasting a lot of money and leaving a lot of money on the table. So having somebody who's experienced in there is amazing.
Something that I'd be interested to see is if, like, the growth of the fractional executive market leads to organizations coming together more to be like, these are our fractional executives that we use. So this is our fractional HR person between these three organizations.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah. And I think that I've had organizations I've talked to have been like resistant to the fractional model because they don't feel right about somebody working for multiple organizations. Like they feel like that's going to be a weakness. In doing this role, I feel like it's such a strength because like I have a bird's eye view of many different organizations and I can see what's going on. Whereas like when I was in house, I only knew what was happening in our world, and it could have been skewed by this, that, or the other thing. Whereas I can zoom out a little bit more now and also figure out ideas that maybe we've tried in one organization that might work in this one, or figure out, I hear about grants when opportunities for other organizations that if it's like a big foundation or something, I'm like, oh, this would work for 6 of my clients. Amazing. So being able to share the skills and the experience and everything that people have as experienced nonprofit people in whatever that looks like. Let's just keep our experienced nonprofit people in the sector. We need them.
I think that leads us back to burnout. And I definitely want to plug this quiz that we have created at Further Together that kind of helps you assess how burnt out you are as a professional. So, are you getting like way too many emails? Are you in way too many meetings? And It helps you assess where you should actually start talking about some help or like getting out of your role. So if you take the quiz, it's on our website, but I'll link in the show notes as well. It will lead you through, I think, 10 questions. And then at the end, you have the option to get our SOS Emergency Anti-Burnout Toolkit for Nonprofit Executives. And that has 8 different resources like the sabbatical request or the out of office, like no nonsense, don't talk to me email template. So there's some really cool stuff in there that we'll plug into the show notes.
Yeah, and I just want to say how valuable I think this is. One, it's a really fun quiz to take. I took it and it's like very well written and very fun. But two, I think often, and this was like my experience, when you're experiencing burnout, you don't know that you're experiencing it. I just felt like I was wading through mud all the time and like I couldn't, and I was like, is this me? Is this, but to actually have something that will, you can just do a little bit of an external assessment, I think is super helpful. It takes a few minutes. It's fun. Like,
Who doesn't love quizzes?
I know, right? I miss those in like magazines. I'm probably dating myself here, but what Disney princess are you or whatever?
Yes, BuzzFeed. Yes, BuzzFeed. It's a word from the past. I swear.
Where you're talking BuzzFeed, I'm talking like Teen Vogue, like,
Yeah,
like legit pen and paper.
don't kill me. Okay, great. So I think those cover all of our predictions for 2025. I would love to revisit this maybe like mid-year and see what's coming true and versus what new predictions we can make. But I think that's it for today. If you have any predictions you would like to share with us, we would love to hear them. Anything you want to add, Caitlin?
No, I think that's it. I think it's going to be an exciting year. I think there's been a lot of, I don't know, people maybe feeling a bit down in 2024, but I feel like there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of good directions that things are taking. Even if maybe it doesn't feel like it right now, I think there's some really interesting ways that things are going. And I'm hopeful for the way that things are going in the sector. And there's people like yourself, Maria, and others in the CCF community and other people out there who are doing amazing work, not just to be part of and working within the sector, but to actively change it for the better. And I think that's really powerful.
I think with all the community and abundance mindset, this is going to be our year. Caitlin, it's going to be your year. Listener,
Time to thrive. That's what I'm doing.
love it. Yes. Okay, great. So thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Small Nonprofit Podcast. We will see you again soon. Take the quiz, let us know what you think, and then also let us know if you agree with these trends. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Nonprofit. If you want to continue the conversation, feel free to connect with our guests directly or find me on LinkedIn. Let's keep moving money to mission and prioritizing our well-being. Bye for now.